Welcome back to the Local Legends Cycling Podcast. I'm your host, Alex. With us today is a man who's equally engulfed into the hobby. He is a gravel enthusiast, a well-renowned engineer, and the only person I know whose relationship is strong enough to survive a tandem bicycle, Matthew Shultz.
Hi, everyone.
So, how'd you first get into cycling?
Man, I think like everyone else, I grew up riding bikes as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I first started to get really into like cycling as a sport was kind of in, junior high kind of era. I started out on like a Walmart bike,
Mm-hmm.
Walmart mountain bike. We had some local mountain bike trails in my hometown in Fort Smith. And I would just get out there with a couple friends and go ride around. It was fun, get to be outdoors, get to, go off jumps, that kind of thing. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was all started with mountain biking and the Walmart, just cheapo mountain bike.
Did you tackle any of those rims?
Actually, no, that bike survived pretty well. I beat the crap out of it, but
Yeah.
it survived pretty well.
Yeah. I remember, I started out with like a Raleigh BMX bike that my dad bought at this shop down here in Fayetteville.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and we did some gnarly stuff with that bike.
Yeah.
But
those BMX bikes are tough.
oh yeah, no, especially back then they were steel and
oh yeah, heavy as hell.
Heavy.
Brakes don't work very good.
Well, oddly enough, brakes worked okay on it.
Oh yeah,
except for the one time. That's the one and only bike wreck I've ever been in. But yeah, and then after that, I guess you guys started cycling in college and.
Yeah. So yeah, I got into mountain biking and I kept with it through high school. And in high school, I saved up enough money to buy like a quote unquote real mountain bike.
Mm-hmm.
I went to my local bike shop and I picked out my very own Specialized Hard Rock.
Oh.
And that was my first bike.
What year was that?
It's probably like 2013-ish.
Okay.
Around that time.
Yeah.
It was like right when 29ers were starting to get popular.
Okay, cool.
It had 29 wheels, hydraulic brakes, and a 3x7 drivetrain on it. Not great by today's standards, but man, back then I was thrilled.
Yeah, that would have been the pinnacle of bicycle technology. Yeah. I think I had a 3x8 whenever I got in. That was probably about 2009, 2007, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I rode that to high school, back and forth down the road here. Actually, not too far from where we're at right now.
Yeah.
I used to live right down the street from here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, then we made mention of the tandem bicycle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Tandem. That's always a good one. That's I guess the trope is that the tandem bicycle is the easiest way to break up a couple, or however the saying goes.
It's the easiest way to ruin your relationship, is what we always told people whenever they were looking at a tandem bicycle. It's like, if you don't have a strong relationship, you don't want a tandem.
Yeah, it definitely puts it to the test. So when Leah and I were still dating, we went back to Georgia. She's from Georgia. So we went back to Georgia. We were out on the coast, and we went to one of the islands. I want to say it was St. Simon. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
and we got a rental, and we were just doing stuff fun. It was spring break, and we're like, we should rent a tandem bicycle. She's like, I don't know about that. I was like, come on, it'll be fun. And we did it. We got on it, and it was fun. Definitely yelled at each other a few times, but it was fun, and just a little single speed. It's all flat. It's out on the coast. So we did that one. We loved it. We got a picture in front of a lighthouse with it. And then in college, we actually bought a tandem bicycle, and it was like a Schwinn tandem. And we rode it like back and forth to class and everything. Like,
oh wow!
We got on the campus like Snapchat story. People was like the modern day Romeo and Juliet. it's us riding the engineering class together.
Did Leah ham that up?
Yeah, she did. I mean, we loved it. I thought it was fun. It was a cool thing. And we had that one for a few years, and then the most recent tandem experience was we went to Mackinac Island, which for the people that don't know it's like a historic island, like army base kind of thing in northern Michigan, between the UP and the regular glove of Michigan. And, there's no cars at all on the island. It's only bicycles and horses. So, of course, we're tourists. We're married to this. This is like, I think last year.
Yeah.
So we go
I saw the pictures on Facebook.
we go and we rent a tandem, and we're trying to figure out, oh, should we get regular bikes? Should we get a tandem? And we're like, we just got to get the tandem. It's a single speed, but then the place has a lot of hills.
Oh.
So we do one lap of the island, and it's fine. We're cruising along, and then we get back, and the tour guide had told us, like, okay, you got to do the loop around the island, but if you really want to see like the rest of the island, you got to go up this way and that way. And like, okay. So we get back to the main thing, and we're like, well, do you want to do the rest of it? And we're like, yeah, I feel good. And so we start, and immediately it's like a 45% hill.
Oh.
It's this huge climb. So, we make it like a quarter of the way up the hill. We're like, okay, we got to get off. So we walk up the rest of the hill, and then we finally get up, and then it's like undulating. And as we're like going through this thing, we're like having to stand up and pedal at the same time. And, I'm standing up, and I'm throwing my weight into it and everything. And, it feels so weird. And I'm like, Leah, what are you doing? You're not pedaling in the right place. And, we're getting into a huge argument. We're almost like ready to throw hands. And we get off somewhere, and we stop and, have a look at something and get a chance to cool down. I was sweating everywhere. And I look over and notice and saw that the front and rear cranksets are not clocked correctly.
Oh.
So every time that I was pushing down, she was at like the top of the stroke.
Oh,
so it was like,
so they're 90 degrees of each other.
Yeah, it was like you could only get a quarter stroke in before you were fighting. So that's what it was we were fighting each other the whole time, which is kind of a good analogy for a tandem bicycle. But once we got back down, we got to the top of the I guess mountain or hill or whatever it was, and there was an awesome, like, it was probably like 4 or 5 miles of downhill cruise. We just cruised that thing. I let it rip, dude. We were going like 25, 30 mile an hour down the hill on the tandem, and
was it a coaster brake or was it?
Yeah, coaster brake.
Oh.
Coaster brake. It didn't have a front hand brake, but it had a coaster brake on the rear, which was pretty fun.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
catch fire.
Yeah, honestly, the tandems, man. It's a fun experience.
Yeah. Now, have you guys been on a more modern tandem, or is that all you've ever done? Is just like
no, just the one that we owned had gears, but it was like cruiser kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to get on a road tandem at some point. I think that would be really cool.
See, and that's the problem I keep finding I keep looking at road tandems and thinking, oh, if I got one, Tia could ride with me on the Taco Tuesday, and then I can do most of the pedaling. But I'm almost a foot taller than her. And that's the problem I keep finding. It's like there's not one that's like built for a 6'1" guy and like a 5'3" girl.
Yeah, they're like really hard to find specialty items, and they're expensive too. Trying to find a good one, it's like minimum like $3,000 for a good road bike.
Yeah, we had a commotion in the shop forever that was on consignment. It was like is built for people who are right around 5'10" to 6'5".
Yeah.
So the front one would hold like somebody that's like my size or bigger, and then the rear was set up for like 5'10" and to 6'3". But the guys, we could ride around just fine, but it's like you'd have to find a really tall girl to ride something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's one of those things that you rent, and you let someone else deal with it.
Well, that, and it's like also not everybody's, because like you can get those custom made, but they're always have this custom made to the people that they're going to be riding on the most. Yeah. So it's not a universal thing. And what I see a lot with the tandem ones is they've got just the seat posts that are real tall, and then the actual frame size is usually like a small or medium.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys ever rode a reverse or a back steer style tandem?
No,
You seen those?
I've not seen them, but it sounds scary.
Well, so you have the shortest person in the front, and then the taller person who's also the captain is in the back, and it's got a little linkage that steers the front wheel.
Yeah.
It steers kind of like a cargo bike, but your cargo is actually helping.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I saw that you know that zombie apocalypse guy that builds weird bike builds. I think he built one, and it's on his website. But that was 10, 12 years ago that I looked that up.
Yeah.
But I haven't ever seen. That's the only thing I haven't seen out in the wild. I've seen a tandem mountain bike,
Yeah.
and a tandem gravel bike, but not a tandem rear steer.
Rear steer. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, and then let's see here. What's your favorite type of cycling?
Man, so I've tried them all. I've done, I think, almost every single branch of cycling. I've done mountain biking, gravel, road, track. I have not done triathlon or like time trial style where it's like super, super aero.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think out of all of them, like gravel is just the most versatile. Like you can ride a gravel bike almost anywhere, and that's kind of like the, you know, the all-terrain bike or alt bike, you know, whatever you want to call it. That kind of style is like just the most like open-ended, and that's kind of what I like about biking in the first place. But I think like overall, mountain biking is definitely the most fun. But I find myself doing gravel and casual cycling the most. And that's just kind of what I tend to do, is just whatever's most accessible.
Yeah, I kind of treat my gravel bike like a modern truck.
Yeah.
But it's like I've got the racks and everything on there. I can go grocery shopping, or I can put the trailer on, go pick stuff up. And then, do you think that'd make it easier for like the average person to just go and make cycling more of a lifestyle instead of a hobby?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. Is, you know, if you go into a bike shop and you don't give them much information, it's changing a little bit nowadays. But it used to be, you walk into a bike shop and you say, I want a bicycle, and it's like a you know, not Walmart. Like you go to a bike shop, then you're going to end up with a road bike. You know, with the drop handlebars, you know, the seat post that's way far up. You're all stretched out. A lot of times there's no support for racks, fenders, anything that makes a bicycle usable for day-to-day stuff, unless you specifically tell them, hey, I want to have X, Y, and Z on my bike.
Yeah, I saw a lot of success whenever I was selling bikes. By the first question I'd always ask people is like, where do you want to ride, and what do you want to do with your bike? And people would be like, well, I want to ride around my neighborhood, or I want to be able to go up and down the Greenway trails here. And then that usually led me to talking to them about a hybrid bicycle. You know, it's hybrid design, not hybrid function. That's where you wouldn't think you'd have to explain that as many times as you do, but man, we explain that a lot to people, because hybrid, what a terrible terminology for a bicycle. But I always could tell people who were more serious about wanting to do that as a lifestyle, because then I could sell them, you know, fenders, racks. I used to set up reps. I used to be the go-to guy at the shop for fenders because I always got them straight and was able to get them even, which you wouldn't think would be hard, but man, it's rough.
It's a skill for sure.
Yeah. And then always found those kind of people interesting. We had one guy who had a giant, this little Free. It's like their first generation of e-bikes. See, he had it for 3 years, and I think he put about 5,000 miles on it.
Wow.
Yeah, but he literally cycled every day. Went from Lowell up to Bentonville a lot of times, and you know he made it a point to be a lifestyle. And it changed. His eventual goal was like weight loss and stuff like that. Yeah. You know, and better health overall. But there is that trope of, you know, you go into a bike shop and you always come out with a road bike, unless you go to like a shop around here, and then you usually come out with a mountain bike.
Well, yeah. See, my experience with that is like, we lived in Fort Worth, Texas before we lived up here. Yeah, I'm from Fort Smith, but both me and my wife went to school in Alabama, and then we moved to Fort Worth for job opportunities right out of college. So when we were down there, like I worked for REI for a while before working in engineering, and it's the same thing. Like a lot of people wanted to ride like road, or like we had the Trinity Trail, which is like a gravel towpath, kind of similar to the Greenway kind of thing up here. But a lot of road specific riders there. But the utility stuff, it's not as strong as it is up here. The most people want to do it for recreation. They're not buying a bicycle to get from point A to point B. They're buying a bicycle to put in the back of their truck or on the back of their SUV, drive somewhere, get out, ride, put it back on, throw it in their garage. It's so much different up here that you can actually like ride from your house to somewhere and feel safe and, go get groceries or go get lunch or something and come back.
And that's something too, like with our Taco Tuesday rides that we do, I've noticed like a pretty good increase in people who actually ride to the ride. Because like they live close enough. They're like, oh, we only live like 3 miles. We ought to just ride and then chalk that up to extra 6 miles for the ride,
Yeah.
Which is always cool. And it's like I live a mile and a half, so I usually end up with about 14 miles by the time the night's up. But it's like some people, I know the Judds, they live almost 5 miles away and they ride every once in a while, especially whenever the weather's nice.
Yeah. When it's nice, like the time change is about to happen next week. And, once the weather turns good, that's an easy 6 miles every day or every week for me that I can add. But yeah, I mean, kind of going back to your point about the utility stuff, like the best kind of mods that I think you can do for your bike to make it so that you can use it for stuff like that, where you ride to something and back, or use it to get around, is a rack and fenders.
Yeah.
Like even if it's just like a little front basket rack, it doesn't have to be some super expensive panniers and everything. Like they're just like a basket rack in the front, and then fenders. You can ride when it's wet. You can ride, you get a 6-pack of beer, or you go to the deli and get a sandwich, throw it in the front. You don't have to worry about wearing a backpack. It just increases the versatility, because, carrying stuff on 2 wheels is difficult. I ride bicycles, I ride motorcycle, like, dang, it's hard to get a thing of cat food home sometimes without knowing how you're going to do it.
I carried a 50-pound bag of dog food one time. That was a trip, and I went down 412.
See, you're crazy.
Yeah. Well, I also have like a truck bed on the back of my bicycle built out of a soda crate. But even then, the weight was just a little too high. And if I was trying to pump up a hill, I was swaying too far. And everything, so.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, the trailer, like.
Trailer's the way to go.
The trailer is just, it's like, it changes the way that you can see cargo on a bicycle. Like, ignore getting a cargo-specific bicycle. You get a trailer and an adapter. You can put it on multiple bicycles. I use it on my e-bike. I use it on my regular bike. I use it on my fat bike. Like, you just hitch it on, and you can go, I go to Walmart and fill up my 5-gallon. I've got 2 5-gallon things for distilled water for our ice maker. Yeah. Because we got hard water. So I go there, fill it up, come back. That's 80 pounds of water that I'm hauling. And most people, take your car. Well, it's close enough. Walmart's like 2 miles from here. Yeah. So it allows you to do things with your bike that you wouldn't normally think about using.
It changes your mindset. Your bike turns into a valid form of transportation at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's the thing I've been pushing for several years. I've been trying to convince people. I don't actively talk to them about it. I usually just like set an example. Well, no, I just set the example. Yeah. And be like, hey, that guy's over there. John Ruchins. I used to cycle to Lewis and Clark every day, and he lives on that route that I would take. And he's like, I kind of make friends with that guy. Well, like 3 years later, I met him at the bike ride, and we knew common people, and it was like, oh yeah, now we're friends.
Yeah.
But he's like, he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I used to see you riding all the time, and I was like, I gotta talk to that guy about his setup because he looks like he's got it together.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, that's one thing too that while we're kind of on the vein of like cycling as a lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
think about the last time that you were driving somewhere that you stopped on the way to your destination and talked to someone. When's the last time you pulled over and talked to someone you saw on the road?
Probably about 3 years ago, but I was going to a bike ride and this guy was riding a 4-wheeler. I knew him from work previously, and it was
That's the most country Arkansas thing I ever.
It was a country road. So, that was like right before I moved to town. So that makes sense.
Well, for people that live in town, like you will never stop, unless it's like your mom that you've run into at Sonic or something. You're never going to stop on your way to somewhere and say hi. Like you're going to call someone on the phone, or you might run into them inside somewhere. But
I think that's another thing too. That's it's like all the cars look the same now. It's like they're all different shades of silver, white, and black.
Yeah,
and every once in a while there's a red one.
The car singularity.
Yeah, and then I made this joke whenever I got my Jetta. It's like I bought a 2005 Ford Fusion.
Yeah.
Because they look exactly the same. Their taillights are just a little different.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I was going to say, like, the kind of where I was going with that was, whenever you're riding to and from places, riding and walking and taking transit or, modes that you have to interact with other people helps. You talk people, you find people, make small talk. People always say, "Oh, back in my day, back in the good old days, we used to talk to each other," and that kind of thing. Kind of helps foster that.
It humanizes people.
Yeah.
Because you see, and this is kind of the same way with in the reverse with the bikes, but people see people like I'm notorious for never wearing any kind of cycling kit. There's a good reason for that. Is because there's studies have shown people who see people who are trying to get from point A to point B on a bicycle, they're more sympathetic with that.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, that guy's not out here being a dick because he has to, or because he has to, and not because he wants to. He's out here trying to get from point A to point B, and he's trying to use his bicycle to do it. And then you see people in road kit, just sitting there in their little Peloton going, and then you think, these guys.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that. I thought that at times too.
Yeah. I mean,
long before I ever got into full and blown into cycling, but
yeah,
I see where it's an issue. But same thing with cars. You don't see the person inside of the car. You just see the car, and then that car is an obstacle in your way.
Yeah.
So you're not talking to anybody.
Right.
It's not like we all have CB radios. I have a CB radio, but not everybody else has a CB radio. Yeah. Let's segue that into now you're pretty plugged into the trail and the what goes on with the behind the scenes of the trail. You want to talk about that some?
Yeah. So I'm on the Active Transportation Committee, which is it's an appointed committee position. We meet once a month with one of the guys with the city to talk about like progress with things involving active transportation, which is basically anything that's not a car related. So with us, we mainly deal with like sidewalks, multi-use paths, bike lanes, sharrows. So we talk with the city about basically the city has a master plan for trails. They have master plans for other things too, but we specifically look at trails and road related pedestrian infrastructure. So once a year, or whenever they need to update it, they send us a PDF of the whole city and say, this is what our master plan looks like. Let us know if you have any comments on it. And we go through and we kind of mark it up and we talk about it as a group. And, that's basically the city's wish list for improvements that they want to make, that sort of thing. And, they use that as a basis to say, like, look, this is what we want to accomplish. Now let's go get money for it. And it's paid for mostly through the bond program. We don't really have a budget year by year. Fayetteville does, and I believe that Bentonville does too. I'm not 100% sure about Rogers. But in Springdale specifically, it's mostly paid through by the parks bond. So we get money every now and then to pay for things, but it's very much piecemeal. Springdale as a city is very conservative on their money. So, I mean, that's just part of it. So once we get the master plan's done, now we get to choose what projects we really want to push for. So one that we just did a public input meeting for was the Westwood Elementary area. There's a planned route improvement to connect just west of Springdale High School, Westwood Elementary, down to the Tyson sports complex that's like on 40th, I think. It's basically we're trying to connect different hotspots of town together. Before I was involved, the big push was getting schools connected to their neighborhoods, which that's an awesome.
That's a good goal for anywhere.
Yeah, just make it so that kids feel safe riding to school if they so choose. It doesn't mandate that kids ride their bikes to school, but it makes it
gives them
so that
the option.
Exactly. It makes them help them feel safe. And
well, I can tell you from personal experience, because I went to Parson Hills, which is like 2 blocks from
me. Oh, it's right across the road.
Anyway, but I lived over there off of Green Acres, and you got to cross Butterfield Coach, and Butterfield. I don't know if you go down Butterfield Coach in the morning, but it's
that's a major highway. That's a state highway.
It's gridlocked, and it's been gridlocked since the late 90s. And that's whenever I was going to school. It was like I started kindergarten in like 98, 99. But I remember that being a big issue because I always wanted to ride my bike to school.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to ride my bike to school until I was about 14, 15-ish, right in there, right before, about my sophomore year of high school. I was able to start riding to school, but I was able to ride longer distances then.
Yeah.
From there, be about 1.5 miles from where my place was over there in Green Acres to Parson Hills, but had we had that, I think I would have been in the cycling scene and done more with cycling earlier on because it would have been a viable it'd be a viable form of transportation at that point instead of just a hobby or a kid's toy like most people treated it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely part of it is like trying to like make sure that things are connected. So one of the analogies that we, whenever we're talking with public or, trying to garner support for things is, it's all about having a connected network. So you can think of the Razorback Greenway north-south. That's kind of like your equivalent to I-49. Now, imagine if there was only I-49, and to get to anywhere else, you had to park on the side of the road and walk.
Well, I can tell you the dark times whenever the trail opened in 2000. Me and Morgan were talking about this, but whenever the trail opened in like 2015, I was riding up and down it, and I told him the story. I rode up and down the trail, and then I asked him if he'd been down this part that was over there by the industrial park in Fayetteville, because there's a spot over there where the trail used to go to, and it just ended. And a lot of the places around the trail system here, it would end in one spot and pick up in another, and it'd just be like a little 12-foot wide sidewalk that says trail, this section of the trail. And it was it's probably about 2018, well, definitely by 2019 it was more conducive and it had a straight run and was more well put together than it was when it first started. And then previously before that, there was areas where there was bicycle lanes to ride down in Fayetteville and stuff.
Yeah.
There might have been a single road in Springdale that was a bicycle lane, but I couldn't tell you which one it was, and I'd heard miss.
Yeah, it's Springdale, Lowell, and parts of Rogers, like that. Definitely nothing before the Greenway. But yeah, I mean, without having, dedicated like corridors to go east west, you're kind of just riding in the road, which in the older days, like especially with lower population, it's kind of okay. Like you can kind of get away with doing that, but any more now, like with how large cars have gotten, how much more population this area has, how terrible our drivers are, it's not really safe to ride in the road, I would say.
Yeah.
Unless you're on like 25 mile an hour, like residential street.
Yeah. That's one thing I hadn't considered. The cars are getting bigger, and that doesn't account for like that gust of wind that you get whenever people pass by you. Because I rode down from Pea Ridge to Fayetteville one time and went to the bank. I remember going into the bank and my hands were just shaking. I was like, why am I so shook up? And it's like, oh yeah, everybody's doing 60 miles an hour past me instead of doing 40 miles an hour like they're supposed to.
Yep.
But,
I mean, what's your experience with riding on roads versus Greenway? Like, I feel like both of us are like pretty
seasoned,
pretty brave, I guess, riding on roads and stuff.
Well, my first negative experience on a bicycle, I had a piece of pizza thrown at me, and it flew right across my face like that. And I'll never forget it because it was slow motion. And I looked back, and there's some guys in a truck, and some girl had thrown the piece of pizza, and they were just like mad that it missed. And that was 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. And then I've had a couple of other negative experiences, but the vast majority of my road riding experiences have generally been a net positive. Because it's like I wouldn't continue to ride if it was completely detrimental to my health.
Yeah.
A lot of the a lot of the bad instances are just usually like a faux pas and like how the road's set up, and then how traffic is forced to interact with the bicycles. Yeah. Because a lot of actually none of the roads here were ever designed with bicycles in mind, let's be real. So, that as a consideration you got to take whenever you go down and ride a road anywhere. You got to be like, you have to think like how that car is going to react to a cyclist, and you got to be able to adjust and I mean, that I agree with you completely. Like there's so much of like a culture war of like drivers versus cyclists, and there, don't get me wrong, like there are people that absolutely hate cyclists, right? And that's on them. They'll go out of their way to mess up a cyclist day. Like I've been honked at, I've had shit thrown at me, I've had it all happen to me before. But the design of the road, like that plays so much of a point that maybe people don't always realize. Like I'm thinking of we went out on that gravel loop on the old highway, I think it was like 62 out west of Springdale, and on the older highways with the really big shoulders, like I'll ride on the shoulder on a highway. Me and Judy rode out to War Eagle back in, I think it was November or tail end of October. We rode out there and we rode 40 miles down, we went down 412, took it 303 south or north, and went down to War Eagle. But the sides of the road, I mean, they're like 4 or 5 feet wide on each side. It's plenty of room to ride. Now I did get a flat. Yeah. But that's nothing a patch and a tire kit didn't fix within like 10 minutes. So it's not like you are going to get more flats. You are going to have, more buffing from the wind and negative pressures off the wind and vortices and all that good stuff. But actually riding on the side of the road on like an old highway, like Scenic 412 and 71 Business, that's not in town anymore. Yeah. It's all in town now. But those weren't bad. And anything with a solid shoulder that's, at least 4 or 5 feet is like, that's okay to ride on in my book. But it's like the gray area, like you get into places where the highway kind of tightens
And although the lane might be 15 feet wide, there's no shoulder.
Yeah.
And then that's where you start to get into trouble.
And that's what it's like in a lot of these modern areas that cut through, because like there's no sidewalk on any of the stuff that's like built back in 90 to 2000. It seems like, I think 2005, I remembered hearing something about like an ordinance passed where they got to start building sidewalk with all new roads, and look at how far we've come with that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're still not the greatest, and it doesn't apply to neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a conscious decision between everybody involved and the general population, which I think the general population is leaning more towards cycling because more people have friends and family who are cyclists now than ever before.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that like the general tone of, leadership and that kind of thing is like, there's a lot of pressure from, people in the community as well as like pressure from outside organizations to start including that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Not only is it like, we want to feel safe, we want to do things, but it also helps build a high quality city.
Yeah.
And that's, you can live anywhere in the United States and the experience is almost the same. So how do you set yourself apart as Springdale, Arkansas? How do you draw people in and get them to stay? You need to have a tax base to, sit there and have money to upkeep the city, right? So you start to increase detail, increase, everything at the personal scale that people interact with day by day.
Yeah.
Give people sidewalks, get street lighting, clean, the streets, repave the streets when you can. All that kind of stuff helps improve people's, how they feel about their environment. It's like if you grow up in a freaking dump, you won't care if something happens. You won't care if someone graffitis on the stop sign or whatever. Like, the city's not going to do anything. It's a dump. And they don't even fill in the potholes. But if you got nice clean streets, sidewalks, lights, everything, so many graffitis, you're like, dude, come on, like,
right.
let's not do this here. So I think it's a good. I think it's trending upwards and in a good direction.
Especially within like the last 5 years, there's been a real solid uptick in that. But I think that had more to do with COVID and people actually like getting out. That was their main form of socialization, was getting out and riding and going places, because they had been locked up for 6 to 8 months at that point.
Yeah, the COVID bike boom, man, that was a sight to behold. I think that it helped introduce people back into like just being outdoors, and cycling is like really accessible now. You can get a great bicycle for like $200,
You can get a really great bicycle for less than $1,000 right now too.
Yeah, it's easier than ever to get something, anything with wheels, even e-bikes now. Like you can get a good e-bike for like $1,200.
Well, yeah, no, like, see, I got out of the bike shops like 3 years ago. Back then, $1,200 would have bought you a real basic e-bike. But, within that, 3-year period, it's just like battery technology and motor technology and the charge controllers, everything has hit a finer resolution and you're talking so much better. It's all like you can go farther, they're much stronger, and they can accommodate whatever task you want to do. And a good majority of those come in a hybrid style setup, so it's like they're not hard to put fenders on or a rack and be able to carry extra items with you.
Yeah.
And since they've got the motor, it's even easier.
Yeah. I mean, I think e-bikes as a category that's like the next big boom in cycling. And, I know there's a lot of old heads that may not like it, the old school roadies and that kind of thing, they think that to be a cyclist, you got to have, wear the spandex and, follow Lance Armstrong or whatever. But man, more butts on bikes. That's how I see it. And, there's definitely a lot of people coming in that, they're not great at controlling a bicycle, but you just got to spend time, you know. I mean, how many hours have you spent on a bicycle to get to where you are? You know, we spend thousands of hours on these bikes, and
I think I spent 245 hours on a bicycle last year.
yeah,
So what's that, like 10 days?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of time, and so I mean, you know, you got to take everything, you got to zoom out a little bit. You know, these are people that may not have ridden a bicycle since, you know, childhood.
Yeah,
and they're coming back into it, and you know, the e-bike thing doesn't help a lot. You know, it's good to start on an acoustic bike again.
if I had $1 for every time I saw somebody wreck an e-bike, like, because that's what they wanted to try, I'd have enough for like a good steak dinner.
Yep. Yeah, and those class 2s sometimes can be kind of tricky with the throttle. That's you can get yourself in trouble with one.
Yeah,
I have a class 2 and I love it, but it's definitely
you
not
also
for
ride
everyone.
motorcycles though, so you know what to expect.
I'm used to it.
A lot of people, man, the one time I scared myself on an e-bike is whenever we got the new Rain E's in. Like, that was the first year Giant put them out. It was 2020. And we got the Rain E's, a full suspension mountain bike with the batteries low slung on the frame on the front on the down tube. And then it's got a central motor in there. So it's not it's a mid-drive motor is what they call it. But and I'm explaining this for everybody at home. Right? Yeah. You know what this is. But that all that low weight and everything, it handled really well. But what we didn't account for was that the first day we put it together, it was raining that day, and we rode out, we bunny hopped the curb, and then we came in, and the sensors were very sensitive on it. We didn't realize how, because this was the next generation of Giant e-bikes. It's like this is whenever they started doing mountain bikes, and they started branching out to other stuff. Like, they'd had a couple of road bikes and they had several cruisers and hybrids, but they hadn't had a mountain bike. Well, that sensor was so sensitive, you could pedal a little bit and that wheel would do a full rotation at full power.
Oh, wow.
So things slid out from under me and scared me shitless. Because all of a sudden I'm just cruising along, and then next thing I know, I'm going sideways.
Slid out from underneath you.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of people get in trouble with e-bikes, that I've realized, because they're not used to that sudden influx of power. And
I feel like on a lot of newer ones, like anything with a torque sensor now, like that problem is non-existent anymore.
Yeah, they're, like I said, they're further levels of resolution, and they're getting to be where they're more just synonymous with an acoustic bicycle or a regular bike.
Yeah, I mean, even like rentals. Like, I was in Chicago and we rented these Divvy e-bikes, and dude, they're class 1 with a torque sensor hub drive, and dude, it was great. It was like riding a regular bike, but you're going fast. You know, you're going like 15, 20 miles an hour on, you know,
and you're just having a blast.
You're on like a freaking Dutch style bicycle. You know, you got a front rack and it weighs like 55 pounds, and you're just cooking on that thing, but you're barely putting any power in. But I think modern e-bikes are great. They really have come a long ways. I mean, I bought mine in like I think like 2020 or 21. And it's real simple. It's, you know, class 2, but it's got the cadence sensor and it's a single speed. So, you know, it's very like bare bones, but any of the modern ones, you know, and kind of combining that with what we said earlier, you can put a trailer on it. You can put rack and panniers. You can get a front rack, fenders.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, one thing is none of the, at least this was true whenever I was working at the bike shop, but none of the Giant e-bikes were rated for pulling a trailer, because I don't think the transmissions and the mid-drive system and the mid-drive engines were ready, or motors were ready for it. Because a lot of the Giants were putting out 80 newton meters of torque. And to put that in perspective, that's like what a tip-top athlete like Colby would be putting out.
Yeah.
You know, they're making and that's another reason you got to get e-bike specific tires, because that torque.
Yep. It'll rip
rip
up tires, rip up your brakes, rip up your chain, everything has to be rated like one step further. But
Well, yeah, it's got to be rated like an Olympian running it.
Yep.
How'd you get involved with that, with the planning
Um,
committee and everything?
yeah, so Morgan actually, like, I guess, put my name in the hat for a nomination, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like anyone from the public can join. I don't know if it's like an application thing, but um, like I could nominate someone, like if we needed more people, like if someone's going to drop out or they have to leave for whatever, I can nominate someone to be. So like if I had to fill a position, I would like ask around and see,
If there's interest. And,
yeah, number one, if someone's interested in doing it, like you don't want to force someone to do this.
No, because
And then number two, like see, how knowledgeable they are. You don't have to be super knowledgeable. You just need to be able to give good, feedback and be able to like talk through certain things. But yeah, it's just I guess I was just in the right place at the right time.
That's cool. Yeah. And I guess you guys, how long have you been in there? Because I remember you were talking about the Dean's Trail.
Yeah, it was probably like a year now.
Okay. Yeah, so you've probably had some input on that last leg of the Dean's Trail then. Or is that before you?
No, it's honestly, so I work in construction. I'm an engineer, right? So that whole process, like projects like that, usually around like 3 years total from start to finish, from conception to cutting the red tape. On Dean's Trail specifically, this one's been going on for a minute. I think it'll be like probably close to 5 years once everything's said and done. But with phase stuff, especially with government work, the funding kind of slows it down.
I remember the big hang up for that, the first part of that was they were trying to get to J.O. Kelly and cross underneath the street there, but getting the machines down there to bore that out and then make it to where they didn't have to shut the highway down was a big concern.
Yep.
And I think they did like 2 studies on that.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, they did 2 separate independent studies on that. Because I remember driving past there every day, and I would watch the survey guys doing stuff, and then saw the machines out there, and then I want to say it was like a month, and they got it all dug out. And it rained a couple times in between there, as it usually does on those kind of projects. But
they had problems with their sump pump for a minute. It took them a minute to get that controller working. Because we live right next to it, so same thing. I saw them working on it, but so something like that, like for a one phase project from planning to finish is usually about 3 years, assuming that you have the money. If you have to get the feds involved, like man, you gotta temper your expectations a little bit. But so pretty much the city has a plan for what they want to do. They take it to a consultant. In this case, I think Garver did the design. So Garver takes it. They do all their civil work. They do, what does the right of way look like? What do the utilities look like? What does grading look like? What is the environmental impact? There's all these things they look at. And then once they do that, they send a rough draft back to the city to review, and the city gives them comments. They send it back, they finish their design, and then they push it for a permit. So they send it to the actual permitting department in the city, not the active transport. They look at it, they make comments, adjustments, whatever. And then once it's permitted and approved, they can start construction. So they go through and they have to move utilities, they do that first. And then they do grading, then they do lighting, or running conduit and feeders for lighting, do all the concrete work, all that jazz, finishing, throwing the grass seed out and everything.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still laughing about my computer.
Oh, that's good. But I mean, it's a long process, but like it's engineered, so it's something that is going to last a long time, which is, I think, it's great. Yeah. And in the same way that everything now is we live in a built environment. Highways are engineered, bridges. Like, thank God there wasn't a bridge on this first section. Bridges are insane. All the engineering stuff you have to go through.
All the regulations for bridges were written in blood.
Yes, absolutely. They're there for a reason. There's a reason why.
Yeah. And the only thing more dangerous than a bridge would be like a damn airplane, actually a helicopter.
Yeah. Oh, helicopters. Yeah. I will not.
Anyway, but
so phase 3 actually has a bridge, and so the active transport person that works for the city, they wrote a grant and got the funding for the last phase of the trail. It's to the tune of around $5 million for the last phase, and that includes however many, I think it's like 5 or 6 miles of trail. Probably like three and a bit.
Now, I remember you telling me it costs XYZ amount per mile of trail. What's that? I mean, you're saying it was like $300,000 for a road, like just like a 2-lane road.
Yeah. So check this out. If you go online, go to the internet, and you Google RDOT cost per lane mile, they have a chart that will tell you cost estimates for each type of road and multi-use path and everything. That, like, they got a dang crib sheet on this thing. So it'll tell you like how many dollars per lane per mile for refinishing, new construction, for highways, bridges, drainage improvements, all that kind of stuff. And the one thing that, like, I was talking with someone about this, and I was like, everyone always loves to say that, oh, why are we building all these trails? It costs so much money. I went through and I did an analysis of how much money it costs to repave Huntsville. It wasn't Huntsville, it was 265 from, it was like 412 up to 264. And I was like, look, this costs like $16 million, and you have to do it every 10 years. And this is like one stretch of road that's like 7 miles.
Well, work for 71 business every 2 to 5.
Yeah, it's part of doing business. That is what a road costs. It's something that people don't always realize is, okay, you've paved it once and it costs a lot of money to build it in the first place, but then you have maintenance.
Yeah.
Well, for bike paths, the split multi-use paths like the Razorback Greenway, you build it once, and if you build it out of concrete, that'll last 25 years before you have to do anything to it. The asphalt ones, you have to do more patchwork because asphalt is it's
more susceptible to outside factors like roots and trees growing up.
Yeah, like anybody that's done the Lake Fayetteville loop, like, you'll know there's spots in there that there's roots that grow up underneath it. They have to grade it down.
That little trail section around the little loop around Lake Springdale was
they
literally falling apart.
Yep.
But they redid it with asphalt, and it was asphalt before too. But like all the trees, all those nice trees that they planted there, they grew up and they had big roots, and it's like there were some serious cracks in there.
Yeah.
There's one spot that fell off into the pond there, but it's better now. Yeah. I'm happy about that because I like to fish over there.
But yeah, I mean, for anyone that's curious about how much it costs, like the most expensive obviously is highway, because you're talking about lots of traffic, all big trucks. Like, it has to be rated to like 100,000 pounds or more load. And it's like $1 million plus per lane mile. It's insane how expensive highways are.
Yeah. Well, they're also getting that much more use. It's probably 1 million to 2 million users per month in this area.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a
scale of economies there.
Yeah, you got to weigh your costs. Like, I would never say like we should not build, the interstate, but there are places where it's like a road widening doesn't make sense, or continuing to keep a road as wide as it is doesn't make sense. You can really trim the fat on your road department by cutting that down and returning returning some of your right of way to trail and other like low impact options like trees and planting. And, the city still retains the right of way. They still own, the rights to do whatever the hell they want with it. But it's, you might only have 2 car lanes at 12 foot versus 4 car lanes at 15 foot each.
So, question with the, they're finishing up the trail that goes across from Harbor to Springdale High School, right?
Yeah.
You think Emma's ever going to just be a walking and bicycle path only? Because if it was going to start somewhere, I think that's where it would start.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not an only. It's definitely like it's probably the most bicycle friendly corridor in Springdale now. Once that is going to be finished, that's the Pride Trail, right? It's the Pride of Springdale.
Yeah.
That goes from Harbor High to I almost called it Southside High School. That's in Fort Smith.
It's Springdale High School.
Springdale High School.
We used to play Southside.
Yeah. So I mean, that's going to see the most, I think, cycle traffic in Springdale, other than the Greenway, is going to be that trail, which, that bridge is just such a good thing for Springdale. Once that's open, like, that unlocks all of Town for everyone that lives in Springdale.
Well, it makes, so like right now, if I want to go fishing in Town, because there's a couple of good spots out there, and Lake Elmdale's out that way. Lake Elmdale, massive.
It's a good lake.
It is a good lake, and it's got some good fish in there. But if you wanted to go, if it's a nice summer day and you want to go take your bike over there, you got to go over that Elm Springs Bridge.
Yep, either Elm Springs or, God forbid, you have to go under at 412.
Right.
Which that's suicide.
I'm still here. Yeah. I cycled that for a year and a half, and I'm still here.
Crazy.
Anyway. My biggest gripe against the Elm Springs Bridge is like the sidewalk is literally like 2 feet wide.
Yeah, it's pretty sketchy.
It's pequeño. It's really small, and then it doesn't seem that steep whenever you're driving in a car, but you ride it on a bicycle, it's pretty steep.
Yeah,
it's not a soft grade by any means. It's manageable, but. I mean, it kind of eliminates any possibility of you going up there and keeping up with speed unless people are just in standing still traffic. And then the next thing is the lanes are real narrow on it, which at the time was built, I think, I don't remember when that one was built.
It was probably right after the interstate was built in the 80s, right? Because otherwise, how do you get...
I don't remember. Because like
Elm Springs, Huntsville, like that's one of the state. Is that 264, or is that's further north, right? That's in the little.
Yeah, 264 is further north. Elm Springs is just a city. I don't think it crossed the highway there originally.
Wow.
Because it was always Huntsville, and then all that was farmland and grape vineyards. Whenever I was a little kid.
Right. I mean, yeah, because it's like the last.
I guess about the first time I remember going over that part was I went over there. We had a date with a girl, and she lived over there, and that was right before Harbor was built. I don't remember going over that bridge. We went down 412, but the first time I do remember going over that bridge would have been whenever I went to go get my driver's license, because the motor safety office was over there for the licensing and test driving.
Yeah,
or driving her test drives for kids to get their license. And it was over there off of what's the name of that street? That'll come to me. Anyway, it was over there, and that's like the first time I remember going over that bridge. And that was, how long have I been? 12, 13 years ago now? Well, no, I'm 32. It's 15 years ago or better. Yeah, about 15 years ago now. So, but just didn't go to that part of town much. Yeah. But thinking about it, there wasn't much out in that part of town.
No.
So those a lot of the neighborhoods that are in that part of the world were over there were accessible from 412. So most people went down 412.
Yeah. Which you can't get in and out of Springdale on 412 anymore, unless you want to sit in traffic for 45 minutes.
Yeah. That's why I used to ride my bike to work. Cause I
Right.
used to I'd be able to cruise on the side.
Mhm.
I didn't do that a whole lot, but it's like if it was standstill and I was running late, I'd cycle the the side of the road.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
good
I mean,
times.
I think that the bridge is gonna unlock, like, I mean, we were talking about that on one of our Saturday rides was, we can start from downtown and go just straight west
Yeah.
and get out and do, I mean, because we do the Reed Valley ride on occasion, which is further south, but, do something like that and go west, go get in the country a little bit, and then come back to Springdale without having to, like, drive somewhere and meet up, or, and you can get over to the Tawnytown side of Springdale, and connect, because if you live over there right now, it's not like safe or viable to get to, like, the, not East Springdale, but, actual Springdale. If you live out in the burbs, then, you got to drive everywhere. So,
All right. Imagine Ryan will probably be very
yeah,
happy about that.
Yeah, I'd asked him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna start riding a Taco Tuesday." And
$100 says he fangirls over him being mentioned in the podcast.
there you go.
Anyway.
All right, Caleb, cut that out. Cut that out.
Anyway, I was just thinking, it's like that'll make a nice little loop because you can start just about here or downtown Springdale, go down Emma Street, cut a left at Gene George Boulevard. You can run up. I see cyclists go up and down that all the time, but you can head all the way down there by the the ballpark, come up the backside and come up and around by you can loop through Johnson, or you can loop through that little rural part of Don Tyson, and then catch the trail over there by Lake Fayetteville.
Yeah.
And then, that'd probably be a good 15-mile loop.
Oh, that's at least 15 miles to go all the way out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think with that one, it's like, it just unlocks like so many loops, and, kind of as we were talking earlier, the more interconnected your system is, it's like so much easier to, like, get to place utility wise, and also recreation. You can make a loop here, you can make a smaller loop, you can make 2 loops that intersect, you can make, a loop on the south side, loop on the north side,
well,
it's all sorts of stuff.
It'll make it easier for me to go to the Bougie Walmart over there at Elm Springs.
Yeah, the good old test store.
Yeah. Tia likes going to that one because they have all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I like going to the one here in downtown, or not downtown Springdale, but
the
old Super Center on Pleasant there, because they have all the good Mexican products.
Yeah.
So I can get my tortillas, my cheese. You didn't have a local legend segment to talk about.
Okay. So I would say that the segment that I ride the most in season, in the summer season, when the time change happens, is from my house to Taco Tuesday, because I'll ride that once a week, both ways, and then anytime that I want to go north, I have to ride out that way, and anytime that I ride south, I go on the other section, and it feels like I'm the only guy that rides around here, but I know that there's not. I see people on the Greenway coming through semi-frequently. I would love to get a people counter out here, one of those infrared or something. Or
hey, you are the guy for that, aren't you?
I mean, yeah, I got a connection, but I think that'd be cool to see how many people use this site.
Well, I don't know how accurate those are, because I've gone by that one that's over there, and
the one in Rogers.
The one in Rogers, and it seems like it's always some different number, and it gets reset a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe invest into like a better one than that one, because that one seems like it's got some issues. But it'd be cool to see like cyclists this year, cyclists all time, cyclists today, cyclists in the last hour.
Yeah.
Because if it had like 5 different categories there, that'd be very inspirational to people.
Yeah. I think that'd be cool.
So I think that one only just tells you how many people have passed by and used the trail. I don't know in what span of time it's covering, but
Who knows?
I've distinctly remember riding past that and it being a big fat green 0 at times. And I'm like, this said like 12,000 the other day.
Yeah. Maybe it's every month.
Maybe. So it's out of order, but where can people find you at?
Oh yeah. So I'm not on a ton of different social medias. You can find me on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way to like reach out to me personally. My name is Matthew Shultz.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the SBC page.
Yeah.
You can find me through there pretty easy. I've got a YouTube channel that I post things, not frequently. It's not my job. It's a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
That one is called Adventure Arkansas on YouTube.
And then you recently put a video about the Walmart home office there.
Yeah. We did a ride earlier in February. We just had freak good weather, and I did a video talking about that we rode through the campus, and it kind of showed everything, and then I pulled off and did a little blurb about the mechanical system used at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about like their cooling towers, chill water system, because that's what I do for work. So
yeah.
I think it's cool to talk about that kind of stuff. Not everyone thinks about or knows anything about industrial level cooling
mm-hmm.
systems like that. So
yeah.
But yeah, I post like all sorts of stuff. A lot of my stuff is cycling focused, but I'll post stuff about like hikes.
There is a video of us sledding and a giant, giant sled.
Sledding. I have some older stuff on there from college where it's like me and my wife, my girlfriend at the time, doing bike packing, and me doing some solo bike packing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've got some stuff on there. It's very, very amateur quality, but it's a hobby.
Right. Well, this is a hobby.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think we're ever going to get rich podcasting.
Right. And if you do, let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know. We'll definitely have Leia as a personality hire.
Yeah.
And then of course you're on Strava as well, and is Matt Shultz, and then you're always at the taco. You're there a good meal.
Pretty reliably.
Yeah, like you're there almost as much as I am, because you're my number one riding buddy last year. You're on Strava.
Yeah, I'm usually at the Taco Tuesday ride. That's my like miles every week. I just try to get that one. I mean, it's close enough, and so long as I'm in town, I'll probably come out and do it.
Yeah. You thinking about doing the Couch of Century this year with me?
I'm going to try to make some of those rides.
Right.
I'm trying to do more events this year, just like as a personal goal. So I think I've already signed up for 3 this year, which is crazy.
Wow. The Cinnamon Roll's coming up. That's a pretty good one, but that's a lot of climbing. That's Goshen's not a place for the family, but you got the bike to handle it.
Yeah. Like the one that I did last year and the year before was the High in the Ozarks ride, which I did the short course both times, but that one's like 50 miles, 4,800 feet. I live for that kind of stuff, man. Like just the stuff that makes you hate yourself.
Oh yeah,
that's some of the best riding, I think.
It's what we were talking about with Morgan. A lot of what you do on a bike is suffering. But you get to
the type B fun.
Yeah, you get to the destination, you look back and like, I kicked ass.
Yeah. I mean, I've got tons of stories about that kind of stuff, man.
Yeah.
There's on my YouTube channel, I had one about me and my wife did a bike packing trip in New Mexico, and man, if I ever get the chance to go out and do that again, I will do it in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. It was near Cimarron, New Mexico, and we did 30 miles of riding, which doesn't seem like a lot, but we 5,500 feet up to 10,000 feet over 30 miles. And then at the top, we camped 2 nights. On the second night, we camped and we did a 12,500 foot summit hike.
Oh gosh!
So we went from like 5,500 feet up to 12,500 feet. In the course of 2 days. You're up there on top of the mountain. You can see north into Colorado. You can see south into where you started, and it's like I'm on top of the freaking world, man. You get up
I bet
there.
that bike ride home was probably a lot more favorable.
Yeah, going downhill. Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that was awesome. It was probably downhill for a good like 90 minutes or more,
Oh,
which
wow.
was awesome. But yeah, anything like that, dude. I love adventure cycling, and I wish I had more time to do it now. But yeah, I got all sorts of stories about doing long cycling like that.
Well, Matt, thanks again.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.